Hey everybody, welcome back to the CALLOUS ADV Legend series, and boy do I have a legend today. Not trying to hype you up, dude, but seriously, I mean, one of the most respected, most feared, and honestly most influential ADVers of all time. If you guys have been following my CALLOUS Invitational tournaments, you may have seen this gentleman as either a competitor in the old days or commentator in later days. I am here with Dekzeh. Man, it is great to talk to you, and thank you for being here and for your time.
Oh, absolutely. You're very flattering. Yeah, I used to be really good at this game. Used to be one of the greatest ADV players at a certain point. Right now, I'm mainly probably known by your viewers by narrating. But yeah, it's very flattering, and I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to see the rest of the series too.
Dude, at least you know it, because this guy really was one of the best, and we'll get into that a little bit later in this interview, this chat, but starting at the very beginning, for my listeners who may have no clue who you are, could you just give us a brief introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, of course, yeah. I'm just a Brazilian dude over my 30s. I'm 34 as of actually couple of weeks ago. Just turned 34. So a little bit older than most people who play Pokemon nowadays, I'd imagine. And yeah, that's just about it. Like I've been away from competitive Pokemon, trying to remember for how long. It's been like
Oh,
at least 3 or 5 years, right? 3 to 5 years.
absolutely. When's the last Callus Invitational that you played?
Oh, I don't even know. Like
See,
I said, my memory is gonna be so I feel like I'm gonna have a better memory of the super early days than of anything recent because the last times that I tried to get into, I wasn't super engaged. I was just like trying to have some fun, like reminisce those days. But my peak days are 10 to 15 years ago, and I probably have better memories of that than I'll have of something that's like 5 to 6 years ago, which was the last time I played.
well, that's perfect. Why don't we start at the beginning then? Tell us how you got into competitive Pokemon in the first place. About how old were you at the time? Where were you in life? Were you elementary school, middle school? When did you really start? And then, I mean, I know that you play all sorts of stuff, DPP, lower tiers, and all sorts of weird stuff, but ultimately, why did you choose Generation 3?
Well, it wasn't as much that I chose Generation 3 as it was that Generation 3 was the generation to play. It was the main generation when I first got into competitive Pokemon. It was what everybody played on Net Battle back in the day because I joined long after the GSC era and a while before the DPP era. So everybody was just playing Gen 3 and that was the meta game to play.
Do you remember
And
roughly what year that was? Roughly?
yeah, I'm trying to look back to it. I remember that I was probably um when I first started, it must have been 2004 or 2005, I want to say,
Very
when I
old
got into
school.
Net Battle.
20 years ago.
Yes.
Very old school.
Yes, absolutely. And back in the day, Net Battle, we didn't even have like a laddering system, right? We just had to challenge people, which was both good and bad. Like you couldn't just queue up, but it kind of forced you to interact with people. You had to like challenge them and talk to them. And I mean, if some random noob just challenged you and you were known, people wouldn't play with you, right? So I kind of had to like start like establishing myself, talking to people, making friends, and starting to like be a part of a community there. And that's kind of how I started getting into ADV. And back in the day, you had like clans, and people made clan wars and things like that. And that's where I got to like know my first real friends from the ADV community. Uh, a while after I started playing and just like begging people to play me and improve. And I remember my first teams were awful. I was using some Jotun Baton Pass, really bad stuff. I get that there are some Jotun Baton Pass stuff that's good, but that was like really bad sub Petaya Baton Pass type of stuff. That's very much like a noob trap. And those were like some of my first teams. And I was like playing people. And then at some point, I played against Taylor, which it's crazy. Taylor is still around nowadays. I was laddering with a friend on call the other day, and we faced Taylor. I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy. And I started chatting with Taylor, and he ended up like after a while saying like he saw maybe some potential in me. I don't know. And then like he had a clan at the time, and then he like, yo, do you want to like join this? Like, there's a lot of cool people. You can improve. And that's kind of where I just started really getting into it, because before that time it was just a pastime. I would like get home to school. If I had nothing better to do, I would just like copy on that battle, play a few battles, and then I would win some, lose some, and then move on to something else. And it was just a very small part of my life, like any small hobby. But after getting into the clan and like getting to know a lot of other people, like the whole net battle thing ended up being more so than a small hobby. It was like a slight part of my social life as well. Like I made friends there, and even though at times I would like disappear for like weeks, because I mean I was a teenager, I also had a real life. I would eventually come back and like talk to people, and it was just a good time. And I had like a lot of really fun memories from those times. And after TO, there was like the two biggest clans from that era. I mean, you let me know if I'm going too fast, because it's kind of how my brain is just remembering things as I go.
Not at all. I think people would love listening
Yeah.
to this. Please do continue.
So it was TO, which was Team Oblivion, and the other big clan was ATQ, or Antiquity, which you may know as the
Yep.
clan from Fear
Fear and
and
M Dragon.
Astamatiros
M Dragon as
and
well.
M Dragon. Yes.
Yep.
And TO and ATQ were the biggest clans. And it was like kind of a friendly rivalry type of thing. Like we would have clan wars, but we would also be friends with each other. And there was a point where the two clans were like, why don't we just merge? Like all of the best players are in those two clans. We're all friends with each other. And then it all became one thing. TO, which had like mainly Taylor was the biggest one, and ATQ, which had M Dragon, Fear, Samatiros, we just merged. And that's when I became like closer to other people like Fear and Nasta. And also Heyo, which I don't know what happened to that guy. He was a really good friend of mine at the time. And so many other people. Like all of the super old ADV people, probably were around either in or like within the circle of those clans. Uh, and it's interesting because at that time, I was still not a part of Smogon. I was not active in Smogon at all. So my introduction to Smogon came in. It was like kind of a clan war, but it was like against some people who weren't part of the clan scene. So I remember that I was paired against Loki. Oh no, I'm just remembering. It was not okay. I remember now. It was not a clan war. It was an individual tournament hosted by ATQ, and as such, a lot of the Smogon players who are not part of the clan scene were invited, and that's how I got into Smogon, because I was paired against Loki, which was one of the greatest players of that era in ADV, and I was like, yeah, who's the guy? Like, how do I even talk to him? And then that's when Taylor and I think M Dragon told me, no, just sign up on Smogon and DM him there. And I was like, I was vaguely aware of Smogon at the time, but I was not even like, that's when I made my account. And this was already 2007. So
Is that your
there's like some gap between that.
is that your join date on Smogon 2007?
Exactly. That's how I know it
Wow.
was 2007.
That might actually have Java beat. I'm gonna have to confer with him on that, but that is old school 07 join date, dude.
Yeah. And the whole reason that I made an account was so I could DM Loki so we could schedule and play. Which was a good time. I ended up beating him.
I was gonna
I did
say
not
you
win
would.
that tournament, but I did beat him, which was cool. And that's when I kind of learned about Smogon and everything. but I really wasn't too interested. I wasn't super competitive. I kind of just liked hanging out with my friends, and to me, the social part of it was bigger than the competitiveness, and that stayed with me for the longest time.
So when did it
So that
when did it shift? What made it shift? What made you go, you know what, I actually do kind of want to try a tournament. I kind of do want to be as good at this as I can be and see where I can take it.
so here's the thing: is that it never really shifted that much because I was never really grinding individual tournaments, trying to like win trophies or whatever. I mainly have been famous because I've played and I did super well in just about every team tournament, which not very different from clans if you think about it. Uh, my accomplishments are mainly tied to like World Cup and SPL, and I joined. I don't even join many individual tournaments. It's not like I was grinding uh, Smogon Tour or after it became a thing, Smogon Classic. I don't even play those really. I joined a few times, but it was never a huge goal for me. So there was like this time around 2007, 2008, I was playing ADV with the clan buddies and whatnot. And it was like a come and go thing. I wasn't like incredibly active every day logging in. I had like stuff going on in my life as well. As it was, I was a teenager. I had school. It was around the time that I got my first girlfriend, and like obviously as a teenager, first girlfriend was a little embarrassed by playing Pokemon and whatnot, trying to be cool. So I would be like weeks without really logging in, but then I would log in and talk to people and have a good time. And it was always like a small part of my life in the background.
So wait a minute, did she not know that you played? Did you keep it a secret from her?
Oh, for a while, yeah. I was like 16, like, so yeah.
Did your friends, your male friends, did they know that you played?
A couple of them, yeah. I wasn't like fully poke closeted, you know. And like I said, that was only a thing when I was very young, the stupid teenager. Um, but then, like from those years, from after 2007, it took a while for me to like fully like kind of abandon that. And the reason that I came back was when um, DPP was added and the simulator was already changed. It was show the battle, and I was like, wow, I may as well try playing some other generation, see what's up. Like, and then some of the people that I know were still around. I'm trying to remember what year was this.
When
Mm,
DPP came out?
yeah, on like Shoddy Battle
Well, I can
because
certainly look up the
it
DPP real
was
quick.
yeah
Let me look real quick.
because this was earlier. Like DPP already existed when I started playing. And I was playing on that battle, but it took a while for it to be a real thing that people played and was like bug free and whatnot on like Shoddy Battle
Uh,
because Net Battle never had
the
DPP.
internet says that Diamond and Pearl were released in September of '06 in Japan and April of '07 in North America. So you're South America, which
Sounds about
I
right.
assume that's probably the same as NA. It doesn't say, but let's call it early to mid 2007 is when DPP came out.
Yeah, which does sound about right. So at that time, Net Battle, which was the simulator people used, didn't have really DPP support, and it took a while for people to make the new simulator and have it be fully working. It was Shoddy Battle, which didn't last for much long, but it was when ladder systems were introduced and whatnot. And I played a little bit of that, and then long after it was Pokemon Online.
Which is
But
where
yeah, I
you
played a little bit
that's where
of
you and I first met, and you were way better than me at the time, and probably
yeah,
always.
that was on Pokemon Online, which
Yep.
was I want to say around 2012 or so, 11 to 12 maybe.
Well, I started in 2010, and the simulator at that time was Pokemon Online. I'm not clear. I didn't play Shoddy, so I'm not clear when exactly that transition happened, but I can tell you that PO existed as early as 2010.
That sounds about right, yeah. Because when I became active on PO playing ADV, it was 2013 because that was the year that I played my first SPL. Yeah, 2013. Let me just double check that.
Do you remember what SPL that was? That was not the very first one, right?
No, it was either 4 or 5.
Yeah, that sounds right, because I remember giving Lavos, he had asked me if he could borrow my Cacturn team. That was probably 2012, 2013. I think that was SPL 5, so I think, yeah, 2013, I'm going to speculate. You can correct me.
Yes,
I think that was SPL 5, about.
that sounds about right. So around that time, I kind of skipped the part where I was lettering a lot of DPP underused. And I mean, I kind of became a little bit influential there. What's one team that I made even has like a rate my team on Smogon that become one of the most used teams on Smogon Tour because that used to be underused, overused, and Ubers, I want to say, just for DPP. And one of the most used UU teams was the team that I built, and I was leathering a lot, but it was mainly a leathering thing. It was just like my pastime. I would hop on, play the POU, pass my time, then quit. It wasn't like as much of a competitive or even social thing. Um, but I kind of got to know some people that were also grinding the ladder because this was when leathering started to become what it is today, to some extent. But yeah, Pokemon was not a huge part of my life from I want to say like 2009 to 2000 and like late 2010. That was like I was starting college. I didn't have as much free time. And then eventually I started to play it again
I'm going
on
to
Pokemon Online and playing a lot of ADV.
I'm going to insert a question actually that we did not talk about beforehand because it kind of plays based off one of these other interviews that I already did. When I talked to Danilo, he took full credit. He said that he resurrected Dekzeh. He said he brought you back from the dead. But in our conversation now, you haven't mentioned him at all. So my question, since there are two sides to every story, what role did he play, if he played any role at all, in getting you to come back to the game from your break?
I think this was a further break than this specific one because I wasn't close to Danilo. I actually met Danilo during my first SPL when we were like playing against each other. So what really got me into SPL and Smogon was when I started playing ADVU and like the ladder had all people that were like known, and then was Loneliness or LN who recognized me from the DPP underused days, which was a tier that he also played. And he was managing a team for SPL that year, which was the Smogon Frogs. And he was like, are you gonna play ADV? And that's kind of how I don't know, maybe like I know this guy who wants to buy me, sure. And then that's how I ended up signing up for SPL. But at that time, I didn't really have contact, like direct contact with anyone. Like I got into IRC just for SPL, for example. Like it's not like, and Discord obviously didn't exist at that time. So I didn't really have any sort of constant contact or any way to be contacted by anyone from Smogon. And that's how I signed up for my first SPL. I didn't even know much about how it was, but I was just like gonna have a good time.
Do you happen to remember what your record was in that first SPL?
So my team was the Smog Frogs, which we were absolutely terrible. But I did well. I ended up 5-4.
Yeah, that's totally respectable for a first SPL.
I want to say it was either a 5-4 or a 6-3.
Even
I
better.
remember that I opened 2-0.
Putting you on the spot here, but do you remember who your very first SPL match was against?
Yes, it was against Golden Sun, and I remember this because I won in 8 turns.
8 turns.
Yeah,
Did he rage
it
quit?
was uh no. I don't think he actually rage quit.
Well, you
I
didn't.
think the game literally just ended. It was just a calm mind sweep, yeah.
You KO'd all 6 pokes in 8 turns.
Yeah, he was just not ready for offensive calm mind Suicune.
Wow, man, SPL's easy. Welcome.
Yeah, he was using like the one of those like classic Superman style teams where
Yes.
everything is super weak to water except for the Zapdos, and Zapdos doesn't beat a calm minded Suicune, so like you calm mind on Tyranitar, they switch Zapdos, you outspeed it, you hit kill, and then you win.
Man, taking me back, Superman. That is yesteryear for sure. But for those of you out there, I mean, because I think we have teenagers listening to this, for those of you who have no clue what Dex is talking about, Superman was a team created by VIL, Veteran in Love, many, many years ago. Back in what, Net Battle? And it was Titar and sometimes Swampert Blissey. The original had a bunch of airborne Mons, which is why it was called Supermon. It's like Zapdos, Zapdos Flygon, Arrow. Do I have it right?
And Skarmory.
Yeah, and Skarm. So yeah, Tar, Swampert, Skarm, and then the 3 other things that I just listed.
Yeah, I think that the very much original was Tyranitar, Swampert as the only two that
Yeah.
got hit by spikes, and then it was Zapdos, Skarmy, Flygon, Aerodactyl.
And then, of course, in modern times, there's a million variations to this. People run Blissey or Jirachi on it. You can put Gengar on there,
Exactly.
so on and so forth. But the OG Superman, credit to Veteran in Love, who I would love to interview in one of these, but good luck finding that guy.
Oh yeah, it was a very iconic, and it is like one of the basic structures that sees play up to today.
So,
But
go ahead.
that's the thing. It was my first SPL. I was new, and I think people were very tail in the way that they played. Not necessarily bad, but there was this thing that I just abused a lot by being very proactive with my teams, where a lot of people played it very slowly. They tried to like slow roll the first like 10 turns, get information and whatnot.
Well, that
But
brings
there's not
us.
much information to gain if you can just get a good read of what the team is from turn 1 or turn 2 a lot of the time.
Well, there's some key notes, some key differences that maybe our listeners aren't aware of. So the first thing is this is back before Rest Talk changes. So it was just a stallier metagame. Rest Talk Zapdos was everywhere. And as a whole,
Absolutely.
stall was just more viable. The second thing is that replays were not what they are today. This is back when our replays were logs, were text, right? So you didn't have information the way that we do today, where you could just pull up every tournament match that somebody's played in the last 2 years.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you wanted to scout and you did that a little bit, it was a lot of effort. You had to dig through logs, write things down, and sometimes people would hide their logs. People wouldn't share. We just get results. You'd ask around people, like, for example, let's say I'm playing against Golden Sun week 1, and then week 2 I'm playing against. I think I was playing against Ace Matador. But then, for example, weeks in the future, I'll be playing against someone who has played against Golden Sun, and I have played. No, yeah, someone's playing against Golden Sun, and I'm playing against someone who they have played. Let's say M Dragon has played against Roro, and now I'm playing against Roro. Then I'll ask M Dragon, like, can you share that log with me? I'll share this log from where I played against Golden Sun, so you can know what he used. You'll trade logs like that. That's how you had to go about scouting. It was almost a hustle.
You mentioned a lot of those
So
great players. You played ADV and SPL at a time when there were guys, BKC, Ojama, McMegan, M Dragon, Undisputed, Asta, all these kinds of guys, some of the all-time greats of the game. As far as you're concerned, who did you most enjoy playing against in that group? And then on the flip side, who did you least like playing against?
oh, that's very tricky to say. So on those first years, like on that first SPL, I kind of just didn't mind who I was facing. I didn't even know much about the story of people, and I didn't know people very well outside of the ones that had been around from the years prior. So at the very start, I didn't care who I was facing. In fact, I brought like the same team multiple times, and I didn't really care that much. But as time went on, that obviously changed. As I got to know people, you kind of almost develop small rivalries. You know, those sort of like friendly rivalries. I was never the type to have online beef. I don't think I ever like hated anyone online or anything like that. Uh, but I don't even know the numbers, but I know that I hated facing Ojama, and I'm sure I have a terrible record against him. I think that's outside of the top players because I know that I did have a really good record against almost all the top players. Ojama might be the only one when my record is just awful negative. And I could never really figure out why. I feel like he just almost had some edge on me. So I both loved because I do like the challenge, and I also hated and dreaded facing Ojama. So he could be an answer to both, maybe. Although that's kind of an easy way out. I don't want to say that I like facing someone that I felt like I would beat a lot. That's just kind of mean.
Well, I mean, we
Um,
can reword the question. I mean, who do you think had a cool style, or did you enjoy the matches with? There's someone that you knew this isn't going to be boring. I'm going to have a good time against this person.
oh, there's so many. Danilo is an obvious one
Absolutely.
because he has, I think, a similar way of building that I did, which is just very proactive and it leads to very interesting, very momentum based games. So from back in the day, Danilo is one that I always liked facing. Um, McMigan or Roro, another one. I always liked facing him. Maybe those are the two ones. There's like some other people like Smurf, not one of those top names, but always someone that I enjoyed playing against. He's a very offensive player. I think those just tend to lead to more interesting games where the you just get so punished or so rewarded for the micro decisions, and it feels more rewarding as opposed to just long drawn out games where there are more micro decisions to make, but you don't leverage as much from them. And trying to figure out what's in the back is always an interesting puzzle to me. And those more creative guys, which is probably why I said Danilo, McMigan, and Smurf, the teams that they make that sort of puzzle more interesting as well, which is always fun.
So, could you please walk us through your preparation process? I mean, you could pick any of these names. If you were against McMegan in a tournament back in the day, what is it that made you choose the team that you chose? Where did you fall on that spectrum, for example, of trying to build something or bring something that's good against the specific opponent, try to counter team them, versus just bringing a team that's good in general and not really worrying about what they're going to bring? And kind of a part two to this question, how did your preparation differ when you were against somebody really good? You know, you're against, Ojama, McMegan, whatever next week, versus, it's some random tournament and you're against Timmy Pokemon 321, some random person you've never heard of. What did that change for the way that you prepared?
So my specific team building process for those team tours is outside of the very first one, obviously, because that one I was just kind of vibing. But future ones, especially as I joined more competitive teams, was a lot different. What I would do is I would gather as much information on teams that they have used recently in similar situations. Obviously, like I would kind of curate the teams that I care about. There are teams that they use that I wouldn't care about, and I think that's more of a feeling thing. I used to be able to look at a team and I was like, no, that doesn't matter to me. He's not bringing this. I can ignore that. And I would like get a sample of, I don't know, 6 to 10 teams, and I would analyze that and trying to find one weak link that they could share in common. And once I found that, I would build around that. So I guess There are like examples that I can come up with. A lot of them would involve the offensive special attackers, offensive waters type of stuff tended to be really good against some people. So I would build around that a lot against people like the Superman style teams, right? Like Golden Sun used those a lot back in the day. Undisputed used those a lot back in the day. Uh, the meta changed enough that this is very outdated. Don't expect them to be like this anymore, obviously. And those are amazing players. So I would start from there. I would start with Endeavor Swampert. I would start with Offensive Suicune. And I was mainly just trying to see, okay, so I have all these teams ahead of me. How can I position myself in those sorts of matchups to get the best out of this Pokemon that I know is very good? And that was the building process, basically. I would start imagining scenarios and how things could play out in the matches before they even happened. So there's like a lot of things that there are matches where basically once I saw the turn one, I kind of felt very good immediately. There's a match against Undisputed that is one that I love because I was leading Choice Band Flygon. I saw a Tyranitar lead. I took 5 seconds, switched to my Tyranitar on turn one and blinded double on his Gengar to pursue it, and that match was over. Because that's how I prepared for the whole match. Like, I knew what I was doing against a lot of the possibilities that he could bring before I even saw what it was. So during the match, I could go a lot based on instinct and a few predetermined lines that I already knew. There was not a lot of improvisation within the match, that especially in the very first few turns, because if you can get the momentum in the very few first turns, when they are still trying to figure out what you're doing, you're already punching them down. That advantage used to snowball so much,
So
and that's how I got a lot of wins, for example.
is it fair to categorize you then? It certainly sounds it to me based on what you just said, but is it fair to categorize you as a heavy planner? Is it fair to say that a lot of your prep was based on the theoretical and was, like you said, predetermined, and you did a lot of the work before the game?
Yes, for sure. Back in the day, absolutely. I used to. It's more so like knowing the scenarios that I want and the scenarios that I really need to avoid. I think that's one of the most important things when you're building a team is figuring out like how do I need to position this to win, or how do I position this to not lose? Like what can I not let happen? And once you know that, it makes the decision making within the battle a lot easier.
So,
And it also allows for a lot of creativity with what you can bring as well, because it feels like you're just one step ahead, basically.
so
I
you,
was very much a player to care about the positioning. It's funny how people view predicting and reading your opponent, or because to me it was never about predicting what they can do. It was about putting myself in a position where it doesn't matter what they do. That's like how I felt I had the control of the match, and I was always trying to build proactive teams that had the means of doing that. And that applies even if you're playing a stall team. You want to put yourself in the position where it doesn't matter what your opponent does or doesn't do. And that's obviously challenging the better your position is. But that was always like my goal when playing, is try to win with the least amount of like huge swinging quote unquote prediction based moves.
so you went on to, I mean, compile a whole list of accomplishments over the course of a very respected career. But if you could look back and just narrow down, point to a couple of them, what are some of the proudest moments throughout your career? What are some of the accomplishments that you look back on the most fondly?
Oh well, this might be a little embarrassing, but I don't mind. I don't have many accomplishments, which is wild because, as I went on a little bit before, I didn't really play individual tournaments. I played a lot of SPLs, which was my favorite tournament and was one that I played the most. And I played World Cup of Pokemon. I have won one World Cup of Pokemon in 2014. That might be the only title I have on Smogon, which is almost embarrassing because the next thing is about SPL. I played my first 2 years on the Smogon Frogs, awful team. We never made anything happen. I did went positive those 2 years though. Then I move on to the Alpha Ruiners, and then it's insane because I went between playing and managing. I made 5 consecutive finals and I lost them all.
Okay, that's a hell of an accomplishment, though. 5 finals in a row is very,
Yeah,
very.
2 of them were as manager, to be fair. But
Sure, but like, has anyone even done that since then? 5 in a row. That's unbelievable. That's
yeah,
consistency at its best.
what's more important to me is that I also in all of those SPLs that I played, I finished positive.
It's just
I never had an
very
amazing
consistent.
record. Yeah, I was never like a 8-1-7-2 type of player. I think I had 1-7-2 or 7-3. I was mainly like in the 5-4 to 6-3 range, but always positive. And that also applied to World Cup. Although in World Cup I had some better performances. But in the year that we won, I wasn't even playing ADV. I was playing Auras, which was interesting. But I remember that there used to be the spreadsheet back in the day, probably still exists somewhere, that had the team records of everyone, and I used to have one of the better ones there.
So, even though you've been removed from the competitive scene for the most part for a number of years now, you did play in several of the earlier Callous Invitational tournaments, and then, as my listeners may know, you then became a commentator on several of the later ones, and your videos were always very well received. So, having been involved in those tournaments and around, I guess, something closer to a more modern metagame, in your eyes, what would you say the difference is? What observations have you made between the way that ADV was played way back when we were talking about all those SPLs versus the way that it's played now in a more modern setting?
Well, first of all, I think modern players are just better. Not like they're all better than we were back in the day, but the the ceiling is higher for sure. I mean, the floor is higher. My bad. English is hard, by the way. Remember, I'm Brazilian. But yeah, I think the floor is definitely higher. People are better nowadays in general. And the metagame changed in ways that, well, there are the bans, right? Like stuff like Baton Pass, which was obviously a really good proactive move, most likely broken enough. I don't really care to debate the whole Baton Pass ban or not. Stuff like Sand Veil, things like that. All of those bans ended up kind of going against proactive plans. And one of the main things that I love about Baton Pass, for example, which I used a lot, um, I kind of popularized Swords Dance Pass and the big stage during SPL some of the time. Would just having like the threat of Baton Pass on your Celebi, on your Calm Mind spam team, even if you don't have it, just like the threat of it changes how people play. And that ban changed a lot. Um, Other stuff doesn't matter as much. The rest talk changes were massive for a while, but in the grand scheme of things, it didn't change that much, which was crazy. So it's like the meta has a wider range, so it is harder to have a good proactive plan. I'm not even sure if that's true. The more that I think about it, I think I'm just washed and I'm not in touch anymore. No, yeah, if I was grinding, I would still be doing the same thing and beating everyone. Sorry.
So,
Because I never really thought about this.
well,
It's very interesting to me. Just on a conceptual level, I
yeah,
don't know. I know that I hated playing against the really good new players. Like when Linear was destroying everyone, I hated playing against that guy. And I couldn't even tell you why. It was probably because I wasn't putting the effort that I needed to be able to compete, and I was just getting destroyed. It was just embarrassing. But yeah, I don't really have a good answer. I know it's different. I can't tell you why. I think I'm too out of touch with the meta game to have a good answer to this. Like, I don't know straight up.
well, you did touch on a number of changes in bans, which I was going to ask you about anyway. Things that you were around to see. We don't have time to have a big discussion about all of them, and this is going to be a many-hour video, but we can certainly talk about some of the more significant ones. We already discussed rest talk changes. You mentioned Sandvale. You mentioned Baton Pass. I mean, taking those just one at a time, do you personally agree with the Sandvale ban? If it were solely up to you, would Sandvale be allowed?
Yes, it would actually.
And why is that?
Um, I just didn't mind it. I think it's okay. So the thing with Sandvale is that a lot of people were saying that it's too much because the way that I view Sandvale is it's really good at punishing passive stuff, and people were the counter argument to that was that it didn't matter if you're passive or not. Like stuff like Glider would just come in and 43% of the time it would just win.
And it's not an issue
But
for
not,
you that you just get 3 misses in a row because of stupid Sandvale and you just lose. It just adds variance to the game. Not a problem for you.
I don't know, man. Just run up the Golduck. I, I'm a I don't care about RNG. I think that's part of the game. And yeah, like you can reduce it or whatnot, but it's it's just a part of the game. The way that I feel, I'm very anti-ban in almost any situation. So there is also that. I feel like, I mean, maybe I'm not anti-ban. I feel like people are just too quick to ban too much, and I never minded Sandvale. To me, it was just a part of the game. It's just a mechanic that exists. I can deal with it or I cannot. And if I miss, wouldn't really feel any worse than if I'm missing a hydro pump. I guess there's the thing where like you made a choice, you put hydro pump, you don't make a choice of blah blah blah. But like make a choice, choose a Golduck. I don't know.
And what about Baton Pass, which has gone through several
Okay,
nerfs and iterations? Would you allow, for example, Ingrain plus Baton Pass? Should that be
okay. Here's
allowed?
the thing. Can you tell me what is the current full Baton Pass rule set? Because I don't even know.
Yeah,
Like,
I'd have to pull it up. I believe I could pull up Smogon real quick, but I believe the current ruling is you can only have one way on the team to stat pass. So you can't ever do multiple. So you could pass whatever agility only with Zapdos, but the Zapdos could not be holding Pataya Berry, for example. Or if you had agility Zapdos, you couldn't also have Combine Baton Pass Celebi, because then you'd be passing multiple stats. You can only pass one thing, I believe, but let me pull up the exact Smogon ruling here on what it exactly how they have this worded. Okay, Baton Pass clause. Teams are limited to one form of stat boosting alongside Baton Pass across the whole team. You cannot mean look, ends, or spiderweb or block plus Baton Pass. And then you can also not use it. These are different bans. You can't use assist. You can't use swagger. But no ingrained Smeargle, no Baton Pass plus block, no Baton Pass plus mean look, no Baton Pass plus spiderweb. And like I said, only one form of stat boosting alongside Baton Pass on the entire team. But we can get to that part. We can get to the current state in just a moment. But why don't we start all the way at the beginning? Would you even ban Ingrain plus Baton Pass? Ingrain Smeargle.
oh man, I can see the arguments for some of that stuff. Like I've just I've always loved use button pass. Never really a full button pass squad. I never really even messed much with the whole ingrained Smeargle.
But
I
like,
can see I can see the ingrain being too obnoxious, and it makes coin flips happen before the matches even starts to a super huge extent. I could see that. I probably could get behind that.
or like old school six
Yeah.
pass, like crashing boom bang baton pass back in the day. Do you think that should be allowed when it's basically five passers and one recipient in the back?
Yeah, sure. I don't know. That's
Soundproof.
fine.
Fine with
Wait,
soundproof?
what's soundproof? Is soundproof banned?
Soundproof is banned, yes.
That is insane.
Okay, so
Um,
that's basically what I'm asking you. So as far as you're concerned, these bans have gone
that's just insane to
too
me.
far. There's no way in hell that you would be banning Mr. Mime if it were solely up to you.
Well, yeah, let Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime is fine. Come on.
Yeah, dude, full
I don't
list here.
know.
Sandvale and Soundproof are both banned. Assist is banned because that's a cheesy baton pass workaround. Even Swagger is banned in ADV now.
Wait, what's the Swagger ban? That one I didn't even know about.
That one is relatively recent, and now we're talking about banning Sand Attack. Some people want to get rid of that. Sand Attack Ninjask. I mean,
No, wait. What happened with Swagger? Why is that banned?
it's the same bullshit. It's just used in a cheesy way on Baton Pass, like with Ninjask and such. It's the same nonsense. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that is the
Nah,
that's the mindset. You're not into it.
I'm not.
You wouldn't ban a lot of this stuff.
Like, does it really bother people that much that they will lose a random game to a Sand Attack Ninjask? I
Ooh,
don't know.
let me answer that. Yes.
Why?
Again, I'm not saying I feel that way, but boy, do people whine about it. And even like
That's crazy.
private leagues that don't use these rules, like even like Mushi League, I don't even know if you know what that is, but just newbie ADV League has like a an additional rule that Sand Attack is banned.
That is insane to me. Like, I think look. If you told me that, like, I guess if you told me, I would probably like. I don't know. I would take facing people who have Sand Attack on all of their teams every single week if I was playing SPL today. Because
I feel that way too because it sucks.
yes, exactly. Like, yes, even if it gets you a game, you're gonna get a bigger advantage because your opponents basically be -1 move most of the time. That's just an advantage. They're putting themselves at a disadvantage, at a risk to use a move that some of the time is gonna do something for them. And if it works, good for them. And if it doesn't, well, they paid the price for their stupid idea. Like, why do you have to ban that?
I hear you, and believe me, I agree, but I mean, this is kind of what I was asking you about. I think the culture has shifted since when you and I were grinding it out. And like you said, people are pretty quick to ban things if it's annoying or it adds RNG or I don't like playing against this. Doesn't take too much more than that these days to get the boot.
The Swagger one is crazy to me because I remember when Swagger got banned in
And
I think Gen
Oros,
6.
yeah,
Yeah, but that was a whole different
totally
thing.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, we had like Swagger and Foul Play and Prankster and Thunderwave like all together. It was very different. And Stealth Rock existing versus just Spikes also a lot different. Makes switching around Swagger a lot harder. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of any of those.
But all that being said, and it's great to talk to someone who's so ban averse because that is not, like I said, necessarily the consensus. There must be some aspects that you would ban. For example, you do agree with, say, one hit KO moves or evasion moves being banned, or is that not correct? Would you allow those as well?
It's something that I never gave too much thought because those were always in place since I have ever played. But I don't think it would be too bad if they were allowed. I wouldn't mind it.
Wow.
It's almost like the similar thing.
Yeah, that's one of the most
Uh,
extreme, open-minded, anti-ban positions that I've ever heard, and I think that's a refreshing take. I can't wait. You guys listening to this, tell me in the comments how you feel about that.
I mean, it's a thing in VGC. People bitch about it there, but it's a thing. There are teams that are built around spamming cheer code and horn drill and things like that, and it's just a part of the meta, and people play through it.
Yeah, that is interesting to note that I mean what we're playing is obviously not the official format. The official stuff, sponsored by Nintendo, allows a lot of this stuff that we said is not allowed. So that's certainly one argument for loosening up bans, which like I said, I mean we could go hours down that rabbit hole, but it really is
For
refreshing.
sure.
It's refreshing to hear someone who sees it a different way and I mean, for me, I'm indulging in it because
Oh,
I feel the
I
same way.
can.
When you say like Sandville or Sand Attack and Swagger, when you go, oh, that's ridiculous, dude, you're preaching to the choir. It annoys the crap out of me. I don't want to argue with some 17-year-old on the internet. It just isn't worth it to me. But like,
Yeah,
but I feel the same way. You guys are just way too quick to ban. I know you don't like playing against it. That's not a good enough reason to ban something, as far as I'm concerned.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, about like the whole one hit kill moves, like I said, I could be wrong. They could be too much, but I wouldn't mind playing with them and seeing how that plays out. Basically, like I think it could end up being okay, but it's just because it was a thing that was banned all the time since I started playing for 30 years or whatever. Well, not 30, 20. But yeah, it's always been banned. I never had to play with it to know. So it's possible that it would be obnoxious. It's possible it would be like too much. But like for example, how different is a Pokemon like I don't know what's a good what even is a good abuser for one hit kill move? Some sheer cold Pokemon. Like it's obviously different, but is it that different or that much better than like a Blissey using Sing? Because that's the most immediate comparison in my mind. It's like a low accurate move that sometimes a complete blowout and we'll get one Pokemon out of the way. And yeah, there's stuff like Sleep Claws. It's obviously different. But the one way that it could be abused is by having the very bulky Pokemon that can switch in and click the move a lot of times, generate that advantage. Because if you're just clicking as a Hail Mary one time, it's not gonna work out very well. It goes back to the send attack thing. You're gonna lose more often than you win. So the way to abuse it will be to having someone bulky that can use it a lot of times to put the odds in your favor, right?
That's what I'm envisioning. Some big fat Pokemon that whatever
Yeah,
rest talk one hit KO move that just sits there and does it over and over again. Hell, maybe you don't even have a fourth move. Maybe it's literally rest talk one hit KO move and you just sit there and do it over and over and over.
for sure. Like I said, I can see it being too much, but I would have to like look at the list, see what can use. Maybe I mean like sturdy is a counter to that. Like we have Pokemons that have sturdy and the ability does nothing. So maybe that's one thing that would just be used more as a counter to that. Karmory becomes even better because the ability now matters. Who knows?
Yeah, this is a refreshing take. I mean, why ban Sandvale? Bring Golduck and Weather Changers. Why ban one hit KO? Bring Sturdy. I don't think a lot of modern ADVers think about it this way, but I am very much. Not only do I love hearing this from such a smart and well respected player, but I can't wait to see in the comments how people respond to that take. It's refreshing because I think a lot of people listening to this have never heard that take that you just gave before, and I hope it's food for thought for many of my listeners.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I imagine people are gonna violently disagree with me, but I don't really mind.
So, reeling it into a different topic, you are respected as one of the best and most influential builders of all time. I mean, there is a list of stuff that you popularized, stuff that you did first, stuff that is associated with you. Your teams have been used as the foundation for many other ideas, and just a snowball. This became that, became that, became that. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, you already talked a little bit about your building process, proactive, based on what the opponent's doing, putting yourself in situations where you don't have to predict. But as far as specific things that you built or specific sets or innovations that you came up with, what comes to your mind as far as teams, sets, concepts that you're proud of, that you popularized, that you feel like you did first? What are some of the ones that you want to get on record? These are Dekzeh.
well, well, one of the ones that gets attributed to me the most is Calm Mind Spam. It was a
Oh,
team that I
oh,
used
oh,
a lot.
oh. Java's not gonna like that, but you he's gonna tell
That's
he's
okay.
gonna tell you he invented it. But you go ahead.
Oh, I said I popularized it. I also improved on his team, so
Okay, so we're acknowledging that he did it first. You're saying that
I did it better. Yeah.
you did better. Fair enough. Continue.
But yeah, the takes with Calm Mind Spam and all sorts of offensive specials, like in general, I use those a lot, and I made them a lot more popular than they were when I started playing. Stuff like rain dance mods, like just about every single one of them. Um, I guess it's not really a theme or like an innovation, but probably the Pokemon that's really common nowadays that I was the first to use on a big stage is Moltres. Moltres was simply non-existing until I used it. When was it that I used it? It was week one of Smogon Premier League, maybe 7. It was against Undisputed. And I went on to use Moltres a couple more times, and it just was a mon that people didn't even really consider much. So that's probably the biggest one that's like I don't even take full claim to it because it took a while after I started using it for it to catch on. And when it became super popular, I wasn't even around much, and now it's just a staple. But yeah, I would say all sorts of special attack in HO style of teams. Yeah, I guess Calm Mind Spam is the most common, but I use a lot of like Gengar, Rain Dance, Doug Trio type of cores, like Explosion Gengar, Doug Trio. Normally with Swampert, the most common one was like Swampert, Endeavor Swampert, obviously. Explosion Gengar, Doug Trio, Rain Dance user. That's just a super strong offensive core. Um, I guess there's a lot of Vaporeon that never really caught on, but it's a Pokemon that I loved and I use that a lot. Sub Baton Pass Vaporeon is I can't say it is good. I don't know how the meta is nowadays, but it has its moments, and when it works, it's insanely strong. I know some people build with it. There's like some teams here and there using it. I know that I was the first to, and it's a niche mon, but it's one that I like, and it probably should be used more. That's just my opinion, though. Although maybe not with I don't know. Maybe Sabaton passes ban, and I don't even know. Um, what else? What else did I do? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm gonna stay with that. Like the most, as far as specific Pokemon go with Moltres. As far as like a team, Calm Mind Spam, special offense in general. Those were my things. Um, I guess I'm making myself sound very narrow for people who didn't know me. I I played hella stall teams as well. It was just a little bit different. Played a lot of Doug Trio stalls. Those were really good. Post the Restock era, I ran a lot of light screen rest Zapdos. That was pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. I've used so much. I've used so much. Glalie is one that I like. I never really popped off with Glalie on a big stage. I did top the ladder a while ago with a Glalie team that I liked. But yeah, it's like it was like a Glalie Spike, weather change, Heracross, Snorlax. It's kind of nice. Yeah, I don't know. Just going down memory lane here. There's so much.
So about
Golduck is a pet Pokemon of mine as well. I like Golduck a lot.
I remember you and I talked about that a number of years ago.
Oh, I like Golduck. The guy's just nice.
So about 7-ish years ago, at the time of this recording, in a now deleted video because some impulsive idiot deleted their YouTube channel, I conducted a survey of like 3 dozen of the top ADV players that I could find. I talked to all the top dogs at the time, and I asked them to give me a list, an ordered list, a ranked list of the top 10 ADVers of all time, in their opinion. And then I took all the responses and I aggregated the scores, and you, sir, ended up as number 1 on that list, as voted by your peers, as the best ADVer of all time. So clearly, people really, really respect and appreciate how good you were and what you did for the metagame. Why do you think that you ended up being ranked number 1 on that list? Why do you think so many of the players that you played against back in the day thought so highly of you?
Well, first of all, that was very, very flattering. I felt really good when that came out because just getting to know like how people feel about playing against you, because it's they always think you're good, but it also, to me, it just means that they also find it interesting to play against me and fun. Because that's how I view the people who I used to think were the best. It goes back to when you said like who I loved and hated facing, and I said Ojama both because I always lost, but I love playing against him because it's that type of challenge. And I think when you're near the top, that's a very common way of thinking, right? You want to face the best, and you enjoy doing so. So that was very flattering. And I think a lot of it has to do with the um, unpredictability. Because, yeah, like I said, I'm sounding very, very one dimensional, but I would show up one week with Calm Mind Spam. The next week, I would be using Sabaton Pass Vaporeon. The next week, I would have Moltres when Moltres didn't exist. It would be like someone using an Entei right now and it being actually good. And
You were
then,
nowhere near one-dimensional. It came up over and over again when I asked people for feedback on their lists and why they ranked people where they did. I got, in regards to you, over and over again, quote, impossible to prep for, a nightmare to prep for. Everybody said that you could show up with absolutely anything from heavy offense to like full-on Dusclops stall, anything in between, and it didn't matter what style of team you showed up with, you were going to play really well on any end of the spectrum. And maybe that's part of why you got rated so highly, but you were definitely not one dimensional or anywhere close to it. You're like the opposite of one dimensional, and that kind of feeds into the next question. I mean, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but did you even have a preferred play style? Did you view yourself as, oh, I'm an offensive player, I'm a stall player, or were you very basically just
so
go ahead?
basically, the way that I view it, I it's one of the reasons that I always struggled to use teams built by other people's and why a lot of people can't really use teams that I built. When I make a team, I I don't care if it's a stall team. I don't care if it's an HO team. I don't care if it's a balance team or baton pass team. I like to have a very solid understanding of what's my plan, what's my goal, how am I winning. So in that sense, every team that I use was proactive. And whatever it fit on that spectrum of from stall to HO, it didn't matter because the way that I operated would be the same. I just know my goal and I know how I can win the game. The one thing that I just never used was like incredibly passive teams, because that's how you, like, the more passive you are, the more prone you are to losing before the game even starts. I mean, that's how you lose to all the things that people are asking to be banned with the most ease. The more proactive you are, the less time they have to do the things that they need to do. So part of this is just acknowledging, like, even if you're playing a stall team, when you're trying to go for 300 turns, you need to acknowledge there are some matchups where you will need to sacrifice your Skarmory turn 3 to get 2 layers down and play it fast. And having that sort of understanding, it changes how you build your teams, and you stop caring about a play style, because it doesn't matter to me. Like, I would boot up any team if I thought it was the best team for that specific match against the specific players. I didn't care if it was a stall team, an HO team. I would just kind of have a plan for all the possibilities that I think they might bring, and I would go and execute that, and just not be tunnel vision and to like, oh no, I'm playing a stall, I have to play for the long game. Or no, I'm playing this HO team, I need to like just get damage in first. Like sometimes you'll be playing your HO squad and you will need to understand that you can't just throw away resources early on. You need to preserve things. You need to go for a longer game and set up at the right time. Even if your team is built to win in 20 turns, sometimes the matchup will change and you have to adapt and preserve resources to set up the specific moment that you need, be it at 60 turns or what have you. So being too locked in into archetypes was never something that I enjoyed, which is what made me so unpredictable, I imagine.
Words of wisdom that I hope the viewers really take note of here. So I got to ask you the big question. I have to ask you the hard question. All these interviews are different and structure them differently, talk about different things, but this is the one question that I ask everybody during this whole series. Could you please, first of all, define your personal criteria, because everyone, different things means different things to different people. Your personal criteria for what constitutes the greatest ADVer of all time. And then obviously the hard question, who is it? Who is the greatest ADVer of all time as far as you're concerned?
Oh wow, that is, you can go a lot of ways about this. You can go like kind of objective by results or like the most influential. Um, I think the two players that have beaten me the most times that I played against it would be Ojama and Linear. But to be fair, Linear, like when I played against him, I was way past my best years. Not using as an excuse, obviously amazing player. People like Aston, Dragon, Roro are so influential, though it's hard to like undisputed as well. I guess my criteria, I'm gonna do something like take everyone at their peak on a 101. I rather, who would I think would win? I think Linear, which is kind of weird because it takes away a lot of the history from the tier, obviously, but the guy, for the moments that he was at the top, it was just unbeatable. Not obviously unbeatable, but it felt that way. And there's like a lot of people who are playing ADV a lot nowadays, like the newer people, kind of a newer generation that came from other tiers, like people like EBR, Star. There's obviously like not part of this, but you cannot forget BKC. There's too many people. But I think as far as, I didn't even touch the super old people like IPL and Husk and Veteran in Love.
But ultimately, if you if you couldn't pick yourself, if you could have only one ADVer represent you, and the stakes were really high, so if you lose, you have to give up your car or something that you really care about, and it was a best of five match, and you can only pick one ADVer to represent you in that match, and you can't pick yourself, the person that you would select is the linear curve.
I think so, yeah. If we're taking like the very peak of each player, I think I'll pick the linear curve.
Uh, It's that's a very difficult opinion to argue with, as far as I'm concerned. But we're not here to interview me. We're here to hear your thoughts.
I mean, that is just what it is.
I mean, look,
It's hard
that's my
because
that's my answer too, and that's not to take anything away from any of the names that you just said. If you want to honorable mention any of those guys, Ojama, BKC, Asta, Undisputed, M Dragon, those are all.
I think there's like something about longevity as well. Honestly, I think linear is a little similar to me in some ways, uh, where neither of us had incredibly long peaks or the longevity of someone like Roro or M Dragon, for example, who has been at a super high level for forever since I started playing until today. Those guys are still on that high level, right?
Correct.
Uh, and neither me or Linear fit that, but I think if we're talking at the very peak, yeah, it would be him or me. I mean, I wouldn't put myself there. I'm not like that cocky, but I think that's the kind of if I'm going by pick, I think it is Linear. Yeah, and I think that's also the only way that I could get mentioned because I also didn't have that longevity. So that's a good criteria to me.
Well, that's why we started with define your criteria, right? Because yeah, if longevity was a factor, it wouldn't be you. It wouldn't be linear. Whereas if at your peak was the criteria, now we're talking about linear. Now we're talking about Majin. Now we're talking about you. Now we're talking about T-Sung for the year and a half that he played. Like it goes.
Oh, true. Oh, yeah, this song is a cool one. Like, if you just mind, like a little story. So this song, on my second SPL on the Frogs, I was playing ADV, and mid-season we were looking for someone, and me and Ray found out about the song. He was just this ladder demon tearing up the ladder, and we bought him, and that's when he started playing ADV as well, with me and Ray Scarface on the Frogs. And we used to talk a lot about Team Builder because he had a very similar play style to me back in the day. Really like the guy.
Yeah, T-Sung was unbelievable as far as just raw talent in Pokemon. Top like 3 to 5 of all time. I mean that guy was unreal, but it's one of those what could have been stories because he only played for what 2 years or less and then disappeared.
Yeah, pretty much.
So who knows?
Like, he got bought mid-season SPL. He stayed around for a year, played another SPL, and then like 6 months after that, he disappeared.
And he won 2 Smogon tours, right? In that time.
Yep.
Yeah, that's that's
The guy
crazy.
just came in, won everything there is to win, left.
Yeah, this community's too easy. I'm bored. I'm out.
need a bigger challenge. Yeah.
And now he plays 4D chess.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That was a joke.
I know.
So,
Very believable though.
so yeah, I mean, getting near the end of this, I mean, looking to the future, what does the future hold for you as far as Pokemon? I mean, I know you're kind of sort of lurk, but I mean, is there anything within the realm of reason that would get you to really come back and take the game seriously and put time and effort in and really buckle down the way that you once did, or is that just gone? There's nothing that's really gonna get you back to that place in life. There's no incentive. It's done.
As far as like competitive Pokemon, I doubt it. Like, there are other things in Pokemon in my life. Like, I created a Brom hack a while ago,
You can
which has been
you can
slightly popular.
you can promote that. Go ahead. Tell our viewers.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just called Pokemon Run and Bun. It's kind of popular right now. Like, big YouTubers are playing it and whatnot. Um, and like, I streamed a while ago. I did like some Nuzlocks, but as far as Pokemon go, like competitive Pokemon, I can't imagine there is much that would. really get me to want to play it. Like I said, I have some friends who sometimes are leathering. I like hop in a call with them, have some fun, play a few ladder games, but I think it's in the past for me. I can't imagine having that grind once again.
I asked this question to some of the other people in the interviews, but I'll ask you as well. Do you think Pokemon has any potential? I mean, Smogon doesn't want to go this way, but just hypothetical with me. Do you think Pokemon could be an esport? Do you think there's ever a day where if you put money on the line and you take it more seriously, this could grow to something bigger than it is now? And if so, would that in any way influence you to come back and try to play?
It would be interesting. One, so what holds me back from saying yes is that I don't think there's anyone I know that I would trust with running this and making it happen and making it good and making it fair and handling all the rule situations
Other than
and not even just
Callus
like,
narrates, right? Other than me.
oh yeah, you're probably the one who has done it the best, unironically.
I was kidding. Go
uh,
ahead.
but even like going beyond just like decisions for weird situations that happen, disqualification, whatnot. Just as we were talking about, just bans and clauses and whatnot, and the tiers themselves. Like I, I think if that were to happen, it would have to start completely separate from Smogon and in a more blank space instead of just trying to use what they have done. Because I think all of the rule sets, all of the bannings and unbannings and the processes and suspects and whatnot, it's all just not very good. And I think starting from a blank space, maybe someone could do it. But then it goes to what I said, where I don't really trust anyone to run that and make it happen to a level that I would be happy with. It would be really fun though to consider for sure. Like that's something that could if it ever were to happen, were to ever come up, yeah, I probably would be down to at least consider it, and who knows. But it's a time sink, right? And that's the issue. As you know, as we get older in life, it's harder and harder to find hours and hours to put into one specific hobby.
That
So
that for me is the number one problem. I mean, I'm married. I work full time. I co-own a small
exactly.
business. I pretend that I have other hobbies. I try to go to the gym. I try to play video games. I mean, there just aren't enough hours in the day, and this is one of those games where if you're not grinding and playing constantly, you're just not going to stay at the top. So I mean, the biggest
Yeah, you just get so behind. And yeah, like I said, that's why the money thing comes in, right? Because maybe if it could ever be not just a hobby, even if it's not obvious like a job, it's not your main source of income, but like if you're making, I don't know, $800 a month extra from your hobby, then that can justify putting those hours a little bit more. And imagine that number can grow even more, right? So who knows? Like, if it were to ever happen in a good way, I would consider it.
finally, before we wrap up, and like I said, feel free to plug your stream or your YouTube channel or anything else. Is there anything else that you would like our viewers to know before we conclude this talk?
Oh, well, I don't know. Not really. If anyone has any other questions, they want to chat with me, like, they can tag me on your channel. I'm down to chat about ADV at any point. And yeah, like I said, I made the Pokemon Roll hack. It's pretty popular. People like Smallland is playing it right now, and Beach House playing it right now. It's called Pokemon Run and Bun. If you guys want to look it up and want to have some fun with a very hard Pokemon ROM hack, it's pretty fun. I mean, I made it, so. And yeah, no, that's about it.
It's a great note to end on. Like I said, Dekzeh, one of the all-time greats and all-time most influential. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
No, thank you for having me. Like I said, I can't wait to just listen to the other interviews from the series. It's an amazing. It just keeps the community going in such a cool way, and it's just nice. Talking about ADV is probably more fun than playing it. So
I feel the same way. Here we are. Thanks a lot.
yeah, well, thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed the video.